inside of a top 5. But then there's the story that, well, it sure did change in 2 days. Pat Fitzgerald, no longer the head coach. We mentioned that going off the air last night. The head coach at Northwestern was fired. He has then sent a letter to Northwestern discussing his representation and also backing up his history there in 17 years as a coach, and then also before that as a player. I think 1 year as an assistant coach. He is not going to go down without a fight. And I guess the biggest question that I have, what changed from the time the president said he would be suspended without pay for 2 weeks during the summer to 2 days later, he has been fired? What actual evidence is there for them to fire him compared to where it was a couple of days ago?
Well, I think that the student newspaper talked to more athletes than just were covered in that one instance. And it does bring to, so when these things happen, and I can't say this enough, the people in charge, their defense is one of two things. Well, not defense, but it comes down to complicity or ignorance. And both of those things are fireable offenses depending on how severe the offense. And it appears the hazing thing, that his ignorance of it is bad enough to where they had to let him go. And I think that's where it came. And I think what changed also was it appears that Northwestern was trying to get this done a little quicker than maybe it needed to be. And then people start asking more questions, and more questions get answered, and then the firestorm starts. Now, I can't sit here and tell you whether Pat Fitzgerald deserved to be fired or not, but I do know that that's kind of how things work now, where they'd rather move on quickly than fight their way out of the hole. So,
yeah, it's pretty shocking. Just a few days ago, wouldn't have imagined this would have been the outcome. Obviously carved out a great career for himself at Northwestern, and was well respected by many. Now, clearly there are other people, how many, I don't know, that felt differently about his image or who he was, or maybe some of the things that he allowed. It's a very confusing story because there's a lot of accusations being thrown from every direction. Every time there's a new article by Adam Rittenberg or somebody talking about the latest that the whistleblower had to say, there's some other former player refuting that or saying, well, hey, that's not exactly how it was. And so I don't know what's right or wrong in this. I mean, there sure seems to be an awful lot of evidence weighing on the side of, yeah, something wasn't right, and, there needed to be some type of change. But, to what extent, it's just hard to tell because there's a lot of accusations and a lot of just mystery still surrounding the entire situation. I know what's been alleged, but do I know that's how it happened, as matter of factly, and everything went the way that it was purported to have? I don't know. I'm sure we'll learn more over time, and especially if Pat Fitzgerald decides that he wants to fight back on this, which it sounds like he does. So more to come. But yeah, I'm with Paul in that after a while, although Northwestern, they held out like a wet napkin. Some schools dig their feet in and at least fight for a while. Northwestern was 2 days after the student newspaper, if even that, and they were like, all right, we give up. You're right. You busted us, and we're going to, I don't know. It was just very strange how quickly that all unfolded and turned directions. So there will be more on this, and I'm intrigued to know what all more there is. But, yeah, ugly allegations, and I don't know. I don't know what to think of it all.
Do these things ever end where a coach is not fired? So,
rarely.
Huggins was going to get – he was fined, lost part of his salary, and, of course, eventually that was blown up with the DUI allegations or arrest. But how often do these things happen these days, and somehow the momentum of – he's got to go, does the person or the coach weather the storm?
Not very often. Really. You can't. Because the institution's going to protect itself. And one guy, look, I've seen it.
But shouldn't the institution also at least, or do you think, and that's why it was a 2-week suspension? I'm not arguing with the firing or not because I don't have the details. But should the institution also fight for the employee who has allegations with one person? Maybe there's a handful of others. We don't know the information. Shouldn't they also fight for an employee who has been there as long as he has? This isn't Jerry Sandusky. This is not the allegations at Baylor. although there are allegations that perhaps the hazing was taken too far. But does that? Sometimes we just go, he's gone, and it's at least healthy to me to discuss what did the institution do to also honor's the wrong word, fight for their head coach who has had no history at all of anything going wrong.
Yeah, but a lot of coaches have no history at all of good anything going wrong because nobody says anything about it. So that's the thing. It's like the other part is you're going to go to bat for the guy who's the highest paid employee of your university who's in charge of seeing all this stuff. And the fact that it happened once when you're paying a guy how much you are, to me, if I'm the university, I'm like, look, we're paying you a lot of money to make sure that stuff like this doesn't happen.
Yeah, the old response, Craig, that, well, I didn't know anything about that. It used to work. Well, I didn't know anything about it. And that doesn't work anymore, does it? Because you're in control. It's your program, so your job is to also know what is going on.
I mean, I don't think it works when there's clearly a lot of stuff going on and you're pretending like you had no idea about it. When you pretend to have an investigation that cleared him of any wrongdoing and then the student freaking newspaper comes out in less than a few hours and says, oh, actually, there was plenty of wrongdoing, at least according to this source. So what an investigation you may have ran to completely miss out on all of these details. And again, I don't know what's true or not in this story. I mean, I kind of get what you're saying, but I mean, what's the university going to do? Tell the student newspaper they're full of it? I mean, what do you want Northwestern going to dig their heels in and be like, nope, the student newspaper's wrong and that guy's lying and we know. And I mean, I suppose they could do that, but I don't think they clearly have a very good, foundation to stand on because doesn't sound like their investigation was all that great to begin with. And maybe it was. I don't know. But, they came out with a statement and they possibly figured that was going to be good enough and would satisfy everybody's, wondering about it. And turns out that wasn't the case. And in fact, there was, a big chapter yet to come that went against the investigation itself as far as what was determined to actually be going on or what's alleged to have been going on. So, I mean, yeah, fight for your employee if you have a reason to fight for him, but I don't see the reason for Northwestern to fight here unless they've got something that they uncovered that flies directly in the face of the student newspaper. If they don't, then I don't know what they're fighting for other than just to say that they fought for the guy. You know what I mean? So, yeah, you don't believe everything at first glance or at first look, but you also don't fight just for the sake of fighting. So I'd have to know much more about what they actually know and what they uncovered in their investigation and what their position was, because it was a quick 180 from the way this story originally was going.
Hayden Maxwell apparently had